Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Music and Moonsaults channel. I am your host, as always, Chris Bourdine. You can follow me on Twitter at IbanezChris, as it says down there at the bottom of the screen. Before we get started, leave a thumbs up on the video, please. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment. Facebook.com/Music and Moonsaults. I have a Facebook page over there. And then anchor.fm/Christopher-Bourdine5 for the audio version of this here podcast. Today, we are continuing our celebration of WrestleMania 17. Matt Durr is back. We're talking all about the greatest WrestleMania, and in our opinion, the greatest wrestling pay-per-view of all time. I have a hot take towards the end about what I consider my favorite WrestleMania match of all time. I had one that I thought for sure was it coming in, and then after watching this pay-per-view again this past week, I've changed my mind. I have a different number one now. So stay tuned for that. So that's it. We're gonna come back, and Matt's gonna be here, and we're gonna talk all about WrestleMania 17. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as I said, I'm back for, I don't know, he's been on here a bunch. My good buddy Matt Durr is here to talk about not only what I believe is the greatest WrestleMania of all time, I think it's flat out the greatest wrestling pay-per-view of all time. Especially after rewatching it the other day, it's just it's so good. We are gonna both of us are gonna try and give it a little bit of a critical eye, but I mean, let's be real here. It's not flawless, but it's pretty damn close. Matt, how are we doing today?
Fantastic. I literally just finished, I've been watching it in parts the last couple days when I've had free time. And I just finished it 10 minutes ago. And, when you ask me to watch the show, usually I'm like, all right, I got to find some time for it. And it was just like, I should watch the greatest wrestling show of all time. I mean, if you're going to twist my arm, I guess I will.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I was a little nervous because I didn't I've been meaning to just put the bug in your ear about recording, today for a while, and then I finally got to Wednesday, and I'm like, hey, or maybe it might have been Monday, but I was like, hey, so Saturday, do you want to talk about WrestleMania 17?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So, we'll give our overall thoughts at the end. I think we're just gonna jump right in.
It works for me, man.
We open with these old pay-per-view opens narrated by Freddie Blassie just hit so hard. Still to this day, it's so classic.
Well, and it makes it feel like you're watching something special. I don't know when it happened, but with the signature now, the then, now, forever, it's so uniform for every show. It just feels like it's whatever. It's the thing they do. But when those special pay-per-views would happen and they'd have a really great opening video, it just kind of drove home like, oh man, this is a big show. This feels special.
Yeah. Yep. And then we start hearing the opening strains of My Way by Limp Bizkit, and and now the World Wrestling Federation, and I can't even remember, was it Snickers this year again?
Snickers
Cruncher. It was Snickers Cruncher, wasn't it? It was like a specific.
I don't remember.
Either way,
yeah.
Snickers and WWF present WrestleMania 17 and Pyro. What do you think of the set? I think it's not super elaborate, but at the same time, I think it was a cool looking set.
It's I wish they would go back to stuff like this, and the one the next year, WrestleMania 18. The overly elaborate, it looks cool when they do it in the stadiums, but I think the 17 set is almost perfect. Like
Yeah.
it gives you this grand feeling that it's you can tell you're in a massive arena,
Yes.
but it's also not so gaudy that you
Yes.
need to look at it all the time.
Right. Right. So, and we get open with a title match right off the bat. Chris Jericho, the Intercontinental Champion at the time, is defending against Commissioner William Regal. This is the famous feud that got started when Jericho urinated in Regal's tea. Yeah, we got a Intercontinental Championship match. Jericho retains. It was really short. It was like 7 minutes, and it ended. It seemed to end abruptly. Like it was like there was the Regal had him in the the story of the match is Regal had put the Regal stretch on Jericho on the Go Home SmackDown, and so Jericho's shoulder was injured coming into the match, and so Regal worked on it throughout the good portion of the match, and he had Jericho in the hold for quite a while. Jericho makes it to the ropes, and then like right after that he hits a lion salt and wins.
Yeah, this is God, not to get too inside baseball, but I think this is when Jericho was still figuring out how to work the WWE style. And I think that was a match where they were trying so hard to make sure Regal looked good. That when it came time for Jericho to, go home, so to speak, and win the match, like you said, it's a bulldog lion salt and it feels like it's over.
Yeah.
And for better or worse, that probably should have been a little different, but for better or worse, it was still a really good opening match. The crowd is there for Jericho. They're happy when he wins and gets it off to a good start. And if that match didn't have everything that follows it, I think it would get a little more credit for being a pretty good opener to a WrestleMania.
Yeah, I one of the things about this show in general I really like is I love how it builds, like especially WrestleManias, and you can take this year and last year out of the equation because of the circumstances and it being 2 nights, but it seems like especially with with the 2 world titles and that, like you're always opening with something big. You're sandwiching it with something big like that, and I like that. Not to say everything on the undercard was unimportant, but like your top 4 matches, with the Battle Royal sandwiched in the middle, were the last 4 matches.
Yeah, and what I don't think we get from WrestleManias now and big wrestling cards in general now is just because you've got your top 4 matches doesn't mean the people on the undercard shouldn't have the chance to do great work too. And I think what really stands out in this show is every single match feels like they did something great for both acts involved. If it's a tag match or all the teams benefited. And in singles matches, both guys came out looking okay, and they were able to have really good matches. Even though this opening match is just like 7-8 minutes long, it didn't do anything to hurt either guy,
right?
And it still left enough for those big 4 matches to feel important.
Exactly. So after that, we get the shot of Shane McMahon arriving in his limousine with the WCW license plate. And then we are taken back to the APA office, and they're playing cards with Jacqueline, and Bradshaw's kind of pacing, and Farouk's like, "Come on, man, sit down. We're playing cards." And like, as a Texan, Bradshaw's fired up, and talks about some of the great Bum Phillips and Nolan Ryan, and the history of the Astrodome, so to speak. And then he's like, "Let's go." And then Ferg's like, "All right, well, damn, let's go." And we get
he's given the whole like Texas. This is the great Texas Stadium. Blah blah blah. Gets all fired up.
Yeah. So then we get a 6-man. It's the APA and Taz with Jacqueline versus the Right to Right to Censor, which was Bull Buchanan, Goodfather, and Val Venus with Steven Richards. This one, another short one. This is under 4 minutes. It's not the greatest match. There's a little bit of a botch with Taz, on an Irish whip or something like that. But Jackie hits...
I'd argue the botch with Taz started like a year prior,
well, yeah,
about Royal Rumble 2000-ish, but whatever.
Right. Jackie hits Steven Richards with a DDT on the outside. And then the good guys win after the Goodfather goes for what used to be called the Hoe Train. I don't remember what he was calling it during this period, but he misses and right into a clothesline from hell. If you told me I had to watch one wrestler's finisher on a loop for an extended period of time, on that short list of candidates would be the clothesline from hell.
Yeah, I mean, when he lays it in, it looks like it's from hell.
There's a clip that gets tweeted out every so often, and I see it every time because Shane Helms always retweets it, but it's of Bradshaw hitting Hurricane with it, and it looks like it just murders him. Yeah, it just like it absolutely, like there's no, you don't need to sell something like that. You just lay there and go, oh God, that really hurts. Mm-hmm. And what I loved about this one too is they timed it perfectly. Yeah. Goodfather turns around right into it. Yeah. Just nice and easy. Yeah. Yep. Next we get another backstage with so Trisha's pushing Linda McMahon in the wheelchair down the hallway in the back, and Stephanie meets them, and she's like, now, when Daddy beats Shane tonight, make sure there's plenty of champagne and strawberries, and even if you hold the ice in your hand and hit it with the spoon, crack it. It tastes so much better. So ridiculous. But setting the stage for later in the night. And then we get a really fun, I really enjoyed this next match. It was the triple threat. Raven, the hardcore champion, defending against Kane and Big Show. To quote Stefan, this match had everything. Golf carts, windows, doors, garden hoses, like... almost knocking out power to the entire facility. Yeah. Right. Well, it's funny, when I hear hardcore title, this is one of the two matches I think of. The other one being when Al Snow and Bob Holly wrestled in the Mississippi River. Yes. What was it, the year before? 2 years before at St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Yeah, it was at St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Yeah. Those two matches are the two hardcore championship matches I think of. And this is what I was talking about earlier, where everyone looks good. Raven looks like $1 million in this match. He's just getting his ass kicked by these two monsters. And what I noticed, you mentioned the windows. I had never noticed this before. If you look, they clearly built a fake locker room security area. Yeah. Like you're like, oh, that's like crappy drywall and like fake windows. But when I was 17, I'm like, oh my God, I wonder how much they paid the Astrodome to do that. Yeah. Yeah, no, and they probably had the building for the week, and they had contractors in there building a makeshift room, or a couple of them back to back, because they threw Raven through the window, and then Big Show pushed Kane through the door, and then they tackled each other into a wall and put a big bump into it. Yep. It's kind of disappointing, the spot where they went to lock. Big Show went to lock himself in that little caged room with Raven. Like he couldn't, for whatever reason, couldn't get it locked. But right, yeah, that was a little bit of a bummer. And then Raven wrecking the golf cart immediately. Yeah. Well, and you've heard the story about if you look at that, I don't, our viewers and listeners, if you watch that clip, there's a giant black cable that's off to the side there. And it's been said that when he runs the golf cart into it, if he would have ripped that out, power for the entire building would have went out, and the entire WrestleMania would have been put on hold. So they were inches away from him just ruining everything. Yeah, well, that's probably a good thing that it didn't happen then.
Yeah.
But they finally make their way back onto the stage, and he Big Show has Raven up in the air, and Kane kicks them both off the stage, and they fall, into, a pit below. And then Kane drop. They kept calling it a leg drop, but I think it was clearly an elbow. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
He jumps off the stage on top of Big Show and wins the hardcore title. So, about 9 minutes. It was fun. Like I said, it thoroughly enjoyed this match.
Yeah, and this is what the hardcore title what I always enjoyed is when they just had fun with it. It's what I thought they were going to do with the 24/7 title nowadays.
It's less it's not slapstick fun. It's just, just fun, I guess. I don't know.
It's a more family friendly version of what ECW was presenting. That they can have like you said, have a little more fun, less violent, a little more campy, but still entertaining.
So we go backstage. Kurt's in the locker room. He's watching a video of the previous SmackDown of Benoit having Angle in the crossface, and Angle tapping out, and Edge and Christian come back, and they're like, "Hey, Kurt, after we win our matches, you want to go out and celebrate?" And Kurt's just like, "If you tap, but there's no referee, and it's not an official match, and there's no bell, did you really tap?" And they're like, "Okay, Kurt, see you later."
You freak.
Yeah. And then we see the Rock arriving to the building, and then we get Eddie Guerrero challenging Test for the European title. Again, I thought this was a pretty good match. A little bit. This is one of my critiques on the show was there's a lot of ref bumps.
Yeah.
And this match is included. Perry Saturn comes down with Eddie. Eventually, Dean Malenko comes out too, and they all three of them, cheat to win, baby. And Eddie becomes the new European champion.
Yeah. Sometimes you hear people talk about Eddie Guerrero and how great he was and how he made everything look effortless. If you run into a wrestling fan that hears that and says, "Nah, Eddie Guerrero isn't all that great," show him this match.
Yeah.
Show them Eddie Guerrero having a really good match with freaking Test. Not to disparage Test, but he was not a technician in the ring.
No.
And this match is outstanding. He makes Test look like he belongs in the middle of a WrestleMania card. This is Eddie Guerrero, his absolute, he's locked in here. Yeah. He's everything's working for him, and he's just about to take off to where we know he ends up.
Well,
so good here.
Actually, he's on his way to getting fired here pretty soon.
I mean, in terms of his work, his ability to he's putting it all together right around here in his ring work, and then when he's on after that,
it's crazy because it feels like a decade, but it's 3 years later and he's the WWE champion.
Right. Well, and that's what I'm saying is when he comes back the next year, right? And he starts his working with Austin, right?
Yeah.
I feel like where he's at is in terms of a character in the ring, this time is where it's all come together. He has his personal problems to get him knocked out of the company. But the next year when he's back is when he jumps right in and he just becomes a force in the WWE.
Right. Yep.
And then real quick,
before
we jump onto the card, you and I had talked about some tweaks or things that we might do different. Just imagine we both agree that this is the greatest card ever. Instead of Jericho and Regal and Eddie and Test, what if it was Jericho and Eddie for the Intercontinental title here? And you have a Test Regal throwaway European title match.
Yeah.
when I looked at this card, I'm like, man, you had a chance to do Eddie and Jericho on here too.
Right.
How do you make WrestleMania 17 better? You actually could have made it better somehow.
Yeah. No, I agree. That probably definitely would have made it better, but it is what it is. We get Michael Cole interviewing Mick Foley, who's the guest referee in the Battle of the McMahons. Stone Cold Steve Austin arrives at the building, and he looks pissed off because he's still Stone Cold Steve Austin. And so then we get much like I said, the hardcore title match had everything. This whole card has everything, because now you get your great technical wrestling match.
Yeah.
With Angle and Benoit, and I loved that it wasn't just a match. It told a fantastic story of, they're having this match because they both want to prove who the better technical wrestler is. And when Kurt, the Olympian, can't keep the upper hand on Benoit, he slugs him in the face and turns it into a fight.
And Heyman has that great line where Kurt Angle just turned this into a fight.
Mm-hmm. And they go back and forth. And then Angle eventually wins. He rolls up Benoit and holds the tights and gets the victory. Just a phenomenal match. 14 minutes. Just a perfect mid-card, really good wrestling match. I believe you picked this match on the WrestleMania draft.
I did.
So, just, yeah. It's
well,
really
and you
great.
and I were texting during the week as I was watching the show, and we were talking about how great Kurt was at everything.
Oh, yes.
And I've said it on your show before. He's 18 months into his being on TV career, and he's already maybe the most versatile performer on the entire roster at this point. He can do everything, and he does it as good or better than everybody else.
Yeah. He cuts the great promo on his way to the ring too, where, he's running down Texas and, you and your cowboy hats, you're not 7 years old anymore, and whatnot.
Grow up.
Yeah, exactly.
and Heyman, and we got to talk about Heyman and JR at some point.
Yes.
But then Heyman goes, what kind of guy wears a cowboy hat indoor or wears a hat to WrestleMania?
Yeah.
They're both wearing hats.
Yeah.
Heyman is spectacular.
Yeah, but the point I was going to make is, so we hear, especially nowadays, fans and, disgruntled talent and whatnot, talk about the how terrible scripted promos are. My pushback is, I don't think it's bad scripted promos. In this era, all of Angle's, if you listen to his podcast, pretty much all his stuff was from Brian Gewirtz. It was written out. It was written for him. The Rock stuff was written for him. But they had Brian, who knew how to write for those guys, and Edge and Christian and Jericho. And those guys knew how to deliver that stuff.
Yeah, I think when you listen to those guys, they all talk about how it was a team process.
Yes.
They would talk Gewirtz would have an idea, and I'm pretty sure he talked about this on the Ruthless Aggression documentary on the network too, where they would have an idea for what they wanted to do, but they would talk it out. So then, how would your character say this? Not how would I say this as your character? How would you say this? And that's where the magic is these guys, then they feel like they're invested in it. And CM Punk has talked about that. When he was there, he loved when he had a writer that would come to him and say, okay, how are we going to do this, as opposed to, this is what I want you to do.
Right.
Because when it doesn't work, the talent are the ones that get buried either by Vince or the fans or whomever. And if they have no say in it, they're getting blamed for something they don't even have control of.
Right. Yeah, no, that's true. So, then we get Michael Cole interviewing William Regal. who finds Kamala and Kimchi have taken over his commissioner's office. And he's just going. Regal in this era is so good. Like Regal, Regal today as the NXT general manager is great, but like he's just so good in his character work during this era. It's phenomenal stuff.
Yeah, and I like when Kamala has the picture of the Queen.
Yeah,
and he's talking about not Her Majesty, not Her Majesty.
Yeah. And then Kevin Kelly interviews Kurt after his big victory, and Benoit comes up from behind, attacks him, puts him in the crossface again. Angle taps out again. So you're going to continue that feud here in the next couple months. And then we come to I mean, this is the down spot on the show for me. This is the spot where I'm like, it just wasn't great. China makes her comeback and defeats Ivory. They've been telling the story for months now about you know, Val Venus had given a pile driver to China, and she had some neck issues from that, and it's been like a back and forth of will China come back, will she not come back, and so finally she's back and beats Ivory in less than 3 minutes to win the women's title. I listened to JR and Conrad talk about this show earlier today, and JR was like, look, it just, China just flat out did not want to wrestle the women. And so, like, from, the way she pinned Ivory, just kind of laying on her.
Yeah.
She had, like, lost a lot of weight, and she didn't look like China here.
Yeah, she looked it. I noticed that too, and it looked like, I don't want to speculate. Like she didn't look like the ninth wonder of the world anymore. Right. She looked like a really fit female wrestler, which is great. But the problem was in that era, she stood out by not looking like the rest, and then once she didn't look like them, she becomes another female wrestler, which sounds awful to say, and I don't mean that in like a sexist way.
No.
But from that character, the character had changed, and it didn't seem like the same China that was legitimately competing with the men a year prior and kicking all sorts of ass. And
I was going to say, if you look at the China a year prior when she was doing the stuff with Eddie to this, and I don't even know. Again, I don't want to make this about looks, but like, her, I don't know if it was the hairstyle or what, but even in the face, it looked, I don't know. It just, she didn't look like China. That's all I can say. So
right, and it's not her looks that make the match not like that's what I like. The match isn't great because you can tell she's not interested in doing the work,
right?
In being there, you can tell she, like, even when she's walking to the ring, you can see it on her face.
Yeah.
Like she doesn't. It's not what she wants to be doing. And I absolutely, if I don't know everyone's story, but if I'm China and the year before, I'm one of the hottest acts in the company because I'm working with the men and I'm hanging with the men and I'm doing all these things that no one else has ever done. And then the next year, I've been bumped down the card back to wrestling for the women's title. And at this time, women's wrestling was not treated seriously. No. I'd be pissed off about it too. Like, I understand that mentality.
Right.
So it's disappointing. She's another one that, like, they could have done so much more with her. And we don't know, like I said, we don't know all the backstory of why things were the way they were.
Right. But. And again, like, it's not long after this and she's gone as well. So, then we go, Michael Cole tries to interview Vince in his locker room, and
so good.
Vince he asks him about Shane, stealing WCW out from under him, and Vince goes Vince, and it's great. And Stephanie and Trish and Linda are all there, and and we're here. We're into the money portion of this show. So there's
think about that. Think about what that says about how great this card is. That I like everything up to this point, I would say has been a really good wrestling show. Like really, really good. And then it just gets like
better,
exponentially better.
Yeah.
The last 2.5 hours or 2 hours of the show.
So I excluding the gimmick battle royal, because that's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
The last four, like I said, the last four matches on this card are arguably the four most important matches coming into the pay-per-view. 3 of those matches are in my top 10 WrestleMania matches, and 2 of those are in my top 10 matches of all time.
Wow. You really like this show.
I do.
I mean, I love this show. I don't know that I would put 2 of the matches in my top 10 of all time, but one of them for sure. And we'll get there. But
I have a hotter take for you later that's gonna blow that.
I'm looking forward to it. Let's get to it then. Let's do it.
So we got the street fight, Shane McMahon versus Mr. McMahon. Stephanie is at ringside. During the course of the match, Trish wheels Linda down in the wheelchair. Shane goes to, and they're potatoing the crap out of each other.
Shane has a black eye like 30 seconds into the match.
Shane goes to give the elbow drop through the Spanish announce table, and I believe Stephanie pulls Vince off, and Shane goes crashing through. And this leads to Vince kind of taking control. Eventually, Trish slaps Vince, which leads to Stephanie and Trish getting into a cat fight at ringside, and Mick having to pull them apart. Eventually, Mick gets knocked out.
Stephanie slaps Mick.
That's right.
And Mick backs her down, and then Stephanie runs away, and Trish chases her.
Right.
And Mick follows suit.
Oh, that's right.
And then Mick comes back to the ring, and Vince is beating up on Shane.
That's right.
And I'll let you take it from there.
So, he's beating up on Shane. He sets a chair up in the corner of the ring, and then picks up Linda out of the wheelchair. And go ahead.
Well, first Vince is beating up Shane, and then he starts to make his way at Linda.
Yeah.
And Mick steps in to stop him and tries to wheel Linda away. And Vince wallops Mick with a chair.
Okay, that's right.
Which I wanted to talk about because Mick Foley's supposed to be retired, and he gets walloped in the head with that chair, and Vince doesn't hold back.
No.
He just cracks him.
Yeah.
And then this leads to Vince setting the chair up in the ring and putting Linda in the corner.
Right. And so he sets Linda in the chair in the corner of the ring, and then tosses like 15 garbage cans into the ring, and just keeps wailing on Shane with the trash cans. And as they get dented up, he kind of tosses it aside and grabs another one. And as he's doing it, he's just trash talking Linda
and Shane
both. And then he finally gets to like the last trash can, and he's holding it over his head, getting ready for the big knockout blow. And from behind him, Linda stands up out of the chair. And that place goes absolutely insane.
Yeah. Like crazy. Like she stands up and 60,000 people go and stand up with her. It's nuts. I forgot how
outside of Austin's entrance and maybe some of the spots in the TLC match, it's the biggest pop of the night.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
And look, Linda McMahon is hardly ever on WWE TV.
Mm-hmm.
She was outstanding. She doesn't break a smile. She doesn't break character. She's out there for like 10 minutes before her moment, and she looks comatose. She looks
every time she was on TV during the lead, and and this storyline had been going since December.
It'd been 4 or 5 months at this point.
Yeah. So anytime she'd been on TV, it was the same. She was the most real, like, she played comatose really well. And so the gig is that, so we talked about No Way Out, right? The match with Trish and Stephanie. The next night on Raw, there was a tag match. It was supposed to be Vince and Trish versus Stephanie and Regal. Well, in the course of that match, they double-cross Trish and dump a bunch of sewage on her. The following week is the infamous, not great angle where Vince makes Trish bark like a dog. Now, there's no defending that at all. I'm going to make a comparison, though. So everyone talks about the WrestleMania 19, the Triple H Booker T match, and they'll lead into that. And the problem isn't just how the content of the lead-in is the fact that at the end of that, Booker T didn't get his comeuppance. He didn't win the title.
Right.
The payoff on this is Trish was supposed to be in charge of giving Linda her medication to keep her in her comatose state. Well, obviously, at some point, the plan was hatched, and she wasn't giving Linda the medication, and it was all a ruse. Hence, Linda standing up. And so, what I'm saying is again, not defending it at all, but at least at the end of the day, Trish kind of gets her comeuppance.
Right. She gets her revenge.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not it's not good. This is the problem with kind of this era is for all the stuff that we really like, there is a lot of stuff that looking back is like, oh man, that's just not, it's not good. And it's not the justifications of it of like, well, it was a different time, still doesn't make it okay.
It doesn't, but at the same time,
but in the terms of a storyline, I get that the bad guy got what was coming to him. Right. And if you watch when Linda stands up and kicks him in his $1 billion grapefruits,
yes,
that place goes crazy. And then when Mick gets back in the ring and gets his hands on Vince, they're going nuts. And then when Shane hits the incredible move at the end, like everyone is happy because the evil Vince McMahon is getting what's coming to him. To your point, though, I think other critics would argue, yeah, but how does the show end? Who's on top at the end?
Right.
So,
yeah. So, yeah, like you said, Shane hits, and I believe this is the first time Shane executes the coast to coast or the Van Terminator or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And at the time I was like, what the hell was that?
Yeah, because you weren't watching ECW.
Yeah, so
you'd never seen Van Damme
do it. Yeah, so.
But I've always said I think the Shane one is more impressive because Rob always springboarded himself, and Shane would go from a standing leap.
Yeah. Well,
and I believe the WWE ring is slightly larger.
I was just gonna say there ain't no way ECW is running 20 by 20 rings.
I don't think, because Austin talks about the difference between the WWE rings and all the other rings that he'd worked in.
Yeah, WCW wasn't even running.
Yeah, I think they were both 18s.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Shane wins.
That match is way better than it had any business being.
Yeah.
Because and it's all the character work, I think. It's the character work of Trish and Stephanie and Linda and Vince. Because everything up until kind of when Linda gets wheeled out is your typical Vince McMahon, Shane McMahon match where it's kind of sloppy and a little ridiculous to see these guys trying to be on the same caliber athletes as some of the other wrestlers, but they more than made up for it with the story.
Yeah, it's something I've realized really as of late with current product of any company. I will take a maybe subpar work rate if the story and character work is superb.
I think that says more about the state of storytelling in wrestling the last 15 years than
probably.
Because the talent is outstanding now.
No, totally. And like I said, there's better matches on this card, but as far as like a total package, like this is really, really good. So
yeah, I mean, you compare the story they're telling right now to what they're doing with Shane and Braun, and I'm not watching the product, but I know enough to know
it's awful.
There's no way that story is going to make up for the fact that the match is going to be crap next weekend.
Oh, for sure.
At least here, the story more than made up for the fact that the actual in-ring action probably wasn't the greatest, but it was so well told.
Yeah, and there was enough bells and whistles with making it a street fight.
Gaga.
Yeah, Gaga. Yeah, exactly. Well, speaking of Gaga, oh boy. This was my my number one pick, first overall in the WrestleMania draft. I stand by that.
Where'd you finish in the poll?
Dead last, baby.
So you rigged the election, or you rigged the vote, or the drawing. So you got number one pick.
I told you,
and you still finished last.
I didn't. That number one was the last place I wanted to pick.
Yeah, and you even resorted to like prank calling me at 3 a.m. to wake me up, so I'm off my game. You stacked the deck.
It's not like you finished high up either. We both got trounced.
I didn't finish last. I didn't finish last in my own thing. I'll just say that.
That's true. Good point. Good point. But yeah, TLC 2, tables, ladders, and chairs, tag team titles, Edge and Christian, the Hardys, the Dudleys, with also Rhino was in the mix, and Spike Dudley and Lita. So it's like,
and where is Rhino from? I don't think they mentioned this on commentary.
I believe he is from Detroit, Michigan.
Yes, that's right. The Man Beast from Detroit, Michigan. I may have heard that once or twice from Paul Heyman.
I believe the Dudleys are from Dudleyville, and their father is Big Daddy Dudley.
Yes, he had a construction company.
Yes,
it was very popular in Dudleyville.
Okay, yeah. Let's go here with commentary on the show. Is another facet of what makes this the best WrestleMania. Like, I still think with the product it is probably gonna be the best WrestleMania, but I don't think it's like as much of a runaway as it is if it's as much as I love classic JR and King.
Mm-hmm.
JR and Heyman here are perfect for each other.
There's a tension there throughout the night. They start to get along, and then Heyman does what Heyman does, and it turns into those two bickering, but they don't let it overtake telling the story of what's going on in the ring. They get their little lines in, but at the end of the day, they're still talking about the action and not trying to get themselves over.
Yeah.
And Heyman throughout the night with his jabs about the state of Texas and how ridiculous Texas is, and how if the Alamo had a back door, like Texas would be in Mexico.
Yeah.
And just Heyman too, he clearly supports the heels, but when the heel is wrong or the baby face is doing the right thing, like he still sells the action from a legitimate sense. He just doesn't always go to the good guy or the bad guy's side. And JR, to his credit, doesn't always go to the good guy's side either. He talks about in the Triple H match about how, like, I don't like the son of a bitch, but he's still really good. Like it's great stuff.
Yes. Like it's about, so again, we all know about head trauma now and concussions and all that. But because to this day, so far, Spike Dudley is fine. I howled in laughter when Lita, like, it almost, like, it didn't make sense. Like, like normally when you see a chair bend like that over someone's head, it's from like Kane or somebody swinging it.
Yeah.
This is Lita. who's not Kane.
Yeah, I feel like they were like, listen, Lita, you're just gonna have to lay it in. And she's like, well, you guys are gonna beat me up too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm laying my stuff in. I don't care.
And she just annihilates poor Spike with that chair, and I'm like, oh my god. But yeah, you get a bunch of tables. Jeff does a big swanton on the outside off the top of a ladder. Spike does a Dudley dog to Christian through a table on the outside. Then we get again. So in my mind, tell me if there's another one as far as in-ring action goes. When they do the montage of clips from WrestleMania's gone by, it's like Hogan slamming Andre and Edge's spear off the ladder to Jeff Hardy. Those are the top two, right?
I'm sure there's others that have been factored in, but there's no more iconic WrestleMania moment to me, because Andre being slammed, while impressive, there's other people have done that bit, and they'd done it long before Hogan.
Yeah.
You'd never seen anything like this. I don't recall seeing anything like this before or since that's done so well. Because when Bubba pulls the ladder and Jeff swings, he comes back and the physics of it work out perfectly, where Edge jumps off the ladder and it looks like you created it out of in computer software.
Yeah.
It looks that perfect.
Yeah.
And the fact that neither one of them were seriously hurt, just incredible.
Yeah.
Jeff Hardy is a madman.
He is.
Who agrees to do that?
Yeah.
Jeff Hardy.
Yeah.
That's who.
Probably Darby Allin too would
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Well, that's the other crazy thing about this match. Like, this was 20 years ago. And four of the guys in this match, I mean, granted, two of them had extended breaks because they thought their career was over. Probably because of matches just like this.
Yeah.
But still, let's be real. All four of these guys four of these six guys are active, and three of them are like prominent on TV every week performers.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. And that kind of ties into something else I wanted to talk about with this match in particular. ECW is going out of business at this point. Yes. Paul Heyman knows that, but he's at WrestleMania. At some point on this card, Jericho's out there, Eddie's out there, Saturn's out there, Malenko, the Dudleys, Taz,
Benoit. These are
his Benoit. Raven has a prominent spot.
Yep.
These are his guys.
Yeah.
These are the guys that he like. The only two that are missing are Van Dam and Tommy.
Yeah.
He has to feel an immense sense of Austin is on this card. Yeah. Austin revitalized his career because of EC. Foley, same way.
Yeah.
He must have felt an insane amount of pride that those guys had made it to the pinnacle of professional wrestling. And to go along with that, JR, this match in particular, JR built the greatest roster that has ever existed in professional wrestling. And this is almost like the culmination of all of that.
Yeah.
He's not the guy who signed Stone Cold, but he's the guy that pushed for Stone Cold. Like, he's not the guy who discovered The Rock, but he's the one that signed The Rock and was like, we got to do something with this guy.
Foley. He fought for Foley.
Yeah, right. Edge and Christian were and the Hardys are JR guys. Kurt Angle is a JR guy. Jericho and Benoit and stuff were guys that he was like, yes, let's get them into the mix.
Yep.
And this is like JR's kind of love letter almost to the industry of like, look at this roster I built as the head of talent relations.
Yeah. Yep. So after all that madness, Edge and Christian win the match after Bubba and Matt are on a ladder that gets pushed over and they go through like 4 tables on the outside, and then Rhino like has Christian on his shoulders and climbs the ladder, and they grab the belts, and Edge and Christian are your new tag team champions. So after all that madness, we get the let me up portion of the show. The gimmick battle royal. I gotta admit, knowing that these two guys are no longer with us. I got a little choked up when Mean Gene and Bobby came out to do commentary on this.
Oh,
match.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've watched it enough. I've seen this show so many times.
Like I knew they were coming. Like I knew they were coming.
Yeah.
It wasn't that. It's just like, oh man, like, especially because at this point, Bobby, the last few years of Bobby's life, he wasn't Bobby.
This is the last on-screen thing he did, isn't it? The last
he was on that
actual...
Warrior. Well, he was on the Warrior DVD, but even on that, like
I mean like in front of an audience. Like this is his last. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Heenan's one of those guys. Whenever I watch him, I'm always like, man, what could have been?
Mm-hmm.
It's like he left an incredible legacy, and there was so much more meat on the bone with him. He's one of the ones that, like, if I could get back and put into the middle of all of it and perfect health and all that, he'd be one of the 2 or 3 guys that I'd absolutely have to have in the industry.
Yeah. I just thought it was cool, because they both jumped ship to WCW, and the company, obviously Heenan wasn't in WCW at the end, but the company was not even a week since it closed, and here they are welcomed back into the fold, so to speak. So I just thought that was nice. But we've got the Bushwhackers, Duke the Dumpster Droze, Doink the Clown, Nikolai Volkov, Tugboat, the Goon, Earthquake, the Gobbledygooker, Brother Love, Michael P.S. Hayes, Doot, One Man Gang, Kamala, Kimchi, Jim Cornette, Repo Man, Sergeant Slaughter, and the Iron Sheik.
Ugh.
And the story goes that the Iron Sheik won this match because they couldn't figure out how to dump him over the top rope.
How to safely get him over the top rope. Yeah. I mean, this is a let me up. It was cool to see. It's nice to see all the legends come out. I wish they'd do stuff like this again.
I know.
Like every couple years, do the gimmick battle royal. Have some fun with it.
Yeah.
Me personally, once, because I'm such a fan of, his podcast, I pretty much watched Brother Love the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he gets dumped out at the end, I don't know if you noticed, but like he gets dumped out, and I think it's Hillbilly Jim pushes Slaughter,
and
he kind of drops Bruce right on the edge of the ring, and then right onto the floor.
Yeah.
Like, oh, poor Bruce.
Yeah, poor Bruce. And then afterwards, Slaughter comes back in and puts the Cobra Clutch on Sheiky Baby, and everyone, USA, yay.
Yep.
Now we're down to our last 2 matches. Again, another cool thing about this card. Your last 2 matches feature arguably the 4 pillars of the Attitude Era. I mean, obviously you can throw Foley in there too, but I mean, Austin, Rock, Taker, and Triple H are like 4 of the 5 guys that kind of brought the company back from the depths and allowed them to buy WCW.
And because I'm in the ultimate Mick Foley slap, you'll notice all 4 of those names you mentioned, they all got their big break.
Yes, by working with
Mick Foley was the one who put them over. So,
and again, so it's kind of like, it's like, okay, here's all the guys that got us here, and then you look the rest of the card, the guys in the ladder match, Angle, Benoit, Eddie, Jericho, those are the guys that through the next decade would take the company and run.
Right.
So,
well, and that's what I was saying about JR and like his love letter to the business with that roster is like, it's the perfect mix of like, you've got these, like you said, the 4 pillars, but then everything underneath, JR's like, look at all this talent I found you.
Yep. So, Undertaker and Triple H. Triple H gets the Motorhead entrance. We are Motorhead, and we're here to kick your ass. Yeah,
and then Lemmy clearly performed that song once in the studio and then never played it again before or after that because he doesn't know the lyrics. Like the music is kind of off.
I mean,
like whatever, I don't care.
Yeah, It's Lemmy. He's allowed.
Yeah.
Both times Triple H had Motorhead perform at WrestleMania, he lost.
Nah.
But this is again another ref bump, which enables the guys. This is why it confused me when I was organizing the draft. Like, I remember them brawling through the crowd and the spot at the control tower in the middle, the choke slam and whatnot. And I'm like, that had to have been like a no DQ match. It wasn't. It was Kyoto got brushed and he was dead for 10 minutes.
Yeah, right. Classic ref bump. Yeah, too many ref bumps, too much fighting in the crowd. I think it's like 4 or 5 matches on this card. They go into the crowd to fight too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's a little much for me.
Yeah.
Actually, it's a lot. It's too much for me. But that being said, this is my favorite of the 3 Undertaker Triple H WrestleMania matches.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. The Hell in the Cell one, I know everyone loves it because of the story and the end of the era, except for it's not the end of an era.
Right.
No, they came back to it again.
Obviously.
I didn't like that Triple H and Shawn Michaels, if you're going to do that in the Hell in the Cell match, if you're going to hit somebody with the sweet chin music into the pedigree, 15 years or 20 years of wrestling at that point tells me it should have been over.
Well, yeah.
And that's, I lose my sense of disbelief at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's all a make-believe world. I just didn't like the way that turned out. The emotion and the story of it is great, but I prefer this match because it's an actual match and it's actual. There's a conclusion that is satisfying to me.
Yeah.
And on a card that's this stacked, it holds up against everything else on the card too. I love this match between these two.
Yeah. I love the finishing sequence once they get back in the ring. Undertaker hits a tombstone, but the ref's still knocked out. He goes to go for a last ride, and Triple H picks up the sledgehammer and bashes him in the forehead, which opens up a wound that was already there from Triple H. Triple H beat down a couple weeks prior. But then eventually, Triple H has got Taker in the corner, and he's on the turnbuckle, hitting him with punches, and Undertaker scoops him up and hits the last ride. And I love how Undertaker pins people when he, especially like obviously the pin on the tombstone, is great. But then when he pins off the last ride, I can't remember if he does it with the chokeslam either, but the way he grabs that free arm and like holds the wrist down, like it's such a little detail, but it's masterful.
Yeah. Well, and this is when we talked about it last month when we reviewed No Way Out. This is Triple H best. He's at his peak.
Yes.
He was never better than he was at this time period.
Yep.
And this is where Taker is on his whole, I want to prove to everybody that I can work. I'm not a gimmick. I can do this just as well as anybody.
Yeah.
And they go out and have a great match. And this is Taker, like you said, holding down the wrist and stuff, using real psychology. Like, why wouldn't a guy that size put all this weight on your wrist so you can't just power out and stuff? It's
yes,
great stuff.
Yep. And now we're here. The main event. We get the video package. Well, first we get again another great thing WWE does from time to time, the showing the guys walk through the backstage with the cage lowering music playing in the background. I love that. So we get that, and then we get the video package, like all capitals, the video package. I released a video last week talking about, My Way and this pay-per-view, and I watched that video package and kind of reacted to it, and it's still to this day, like, they've never done anything better.
No, like, and think about it. You're a big music guy. Yeah. We grew up in we were teenagers in the late 90s, early 2000s. Limp Bizkit is kind of a joke.
It is now, but at the time,
but think of it like Limp Bizkit to me. Whenever someone is like, Limp Bizkit sucks, blah blah blah, I'm always like, yeah, well, My Way is the soundtrack for the greatest video package in wrestling history, so they're all right in my book.
Yeah.
Anything else they did is forgiven to an extent.
Yeah.
Because that song, at least they made that song, and I got that video out of it.
No, they're treated like a joke now, but they weren't at this time.
They were a big deal at this time. 20 years later, it still holds up.
I gave the numbers of the album, the Chocolate Starfish album, on that video, and the first day it almost went gold. The first day,
right?
So,
quick side piece: I bought that album a week early from a CD store up in Brighton, Michigan, and I paid like 2 times face value just to get it a week early because I was teenager and 2001, gotta have it. I'll pay $35 for a CD. Not my proudest moment. Not my proudest moment.
And then so like that video package ends, they a couple weeks prior they have that awesome sit down interview with JR, The Rock, and Austin, and the video package ends with Austin's line, "I need to beat you, Rock. I need it more than anything you could imagine. With all due respect." And then we cut back to the arena, and we get again another thing. Oh, Howard Finkel's voice at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
There's nothing better,
It just feels right.
It does. And he's, the following contest is for the World Wrestling Federation Championship, and it is no disqualification. The emphasis you put on the no disqualification part, I was like, man, he's really like showing out here. And JR's reaction to that announcement is priceless. He's like, what?
When the hell did that happen?
Exactly. And then we get, Austin walking to the ring, and then The Rock.
When that glass hits. Glass hits.
I think I said this when we did No Mercy back in October. You can't beat the classic Austin theme, but this Disturbed version is right up there for me. There's something about the addition of it being in a lower key, and then the lyrics on top, like it just like it's about to go down when that theme
right
hits. And it's like it's on from the jump, like Rockets in the ring, and they're going at it. And it, like you said, they go to the outside. The Spanish table gets broke for a second time. Or no, that happened in the previous match. I'm sorry.
Yep.
But yeah, they're brawling. Austin hits Rock with the ring bell and busts him open. What?
For all the editing they're doing on the Peacock network of old WWE stuff, they didn't cut out the part where The Rock dropped his blade 3 times and has to fumble around and put it in his hand and stuff.
Yeah. Right.
I got a kick out of that.
Yeah, well. And then they're brawling. Eventually Austin takes off a turnbuckle cover, but Rock reverses and Austin goes face first into that, and he gets busted open, and The Rock hits him with the ring bell, and then The Rock ends up hitting a stunner, and then Vince saunters down to the ring, and it's like, well, what is Vince doing here? And again, JR is just like, what the hell is he doing here? And so obviously everyone thinks he's gonna screw Austin. Rock hits a people's elbow and goes for the pin, and Vince comes in and pulls The Rock off. And, Rock hits a rock bottom, and then Austin hits a stunner and has Vince give him a chair, and he hits Rock with, he has Vince he holds Rock and has Vince hit him with the chair. And that doesn't get the job done. So then finally Austin takes the chair and just wears The Rock out with the steel chair. Like, hits him like 12 times up and down his whole body with that steel chair. And that finally gets the 3 count.
And the whole time JR is going nuts.
Yeah.
Just like, what is Stone Cold doing? How could he do that? And Heyman's landing on things. He's turned his back on all of his fans.
Yeah.
Really driving home Austin's a bad guy.
Yeah. But again, like it makes sense going back to the video. You know, he's so consumed with regaining the championship that he's willing to make a deal with the devil to get it done. Like it's so this is where I wanted to spend. I think you and I are on the same side on this. When you talk to anyone who is in the company or any of the quote unquote talking heads, everyone talks about what a mistake it was to turn Austin heel. And I'm sure, yeah, business probably did take a dip and whatnot. For me as a fan, especially being a Rock guy at this time anyway, and then, right after this, we get the 2-man power trip. I think it's great.
It could have been great.
Yeah.
I think this is getting deep in the weeds. I think the combination of buying WCW, starting the XFL, taking the company public the fall before, and planning WrestleMania was too much for the inner circle or the creatives to properly flesh out how this should have gone. If you wanted to turn Austin heel, that's fine. I think it would have been better if in the weeks prior, when Austin and Rock were doing that one-upsmanship, if Vince is in the background costing both of them to get one-upped by the other. And almost like Vince is like, I'm going to screw one of you, but who's it going to be? So when he comes out at Mania, you're like, why is he here? It almost was too much to process in the middle of everything else that was going on in that match. And I think it would have made more sense if, Vince is going to screw somebody. And if early on he comes out and it looks like he's going to screw Austin. And you've got this, The Rock is lined up with Stone Cold, and there's The Rock and Austin, you're the one that's going to screw me. And it's no, I'm not with him. You are. No one knows who it really is. And then when the big reveal happens, it's can you believe Stone Cold is the bastard that aligned with Vince McMahon? And it would have made more sense post WrestleMania because The Rock goes away the next night, isn't back for several months.
Yeah.
And it's all of a sudden Vince is aligned with Austin and Austin is aligned with Triple H. None of it just didn't make any sense when you think about everything leading up to WrestleMania, why Austin would choose to go with Vince and then the next night Triple H.
I think because I watch up until the go home week because Peacock sucks. I watched all the to me. It does make they did a good job planting the seeds of why Austin would be so desperate as to turn to Vince McMahon to help him win that title. It consumed him more than anything regaining that championship.
I guess I just think there was a better way to go about it.
And I think if you telegraph that Vince is going to play a part in it, I think that takes away. I think, having Vince come out unannounced, I think was the better way to go rather than because you still get because he has no love for either man at that point.
Yeah, if you watch that crowd though, I noticed it watching it today. It didn't look like the crowd gave much of a crap. When it happened.
That. So that's the part I will agree on is that it probably wasn't a smart idea to do it in Texas.
And also if they knew the next night Dwayne was going to make the Mummy, right? So who's your top babyface after this? You're losing The Rock, okay? You're losing The Rock, and you've just taken the guy that everyone wants to cheer for. And we all agree, no one wanted Stone Cold to become a bad guy. But sometimes the hotter the babyface, the hotter the heel. I get it, but he's got to have someone to work with. And the next month, they're working with Kane and The Undertaker. not exactly the same babyface level that The Rock was.
Okay, but I'll flip it on you. If you keep him babyface, The Rock goes away. Who do you? He just finished a blood feud with Triple H the month prior, and you've got Kurt Angle who just lost the title. So you're not, you're not going to put it right back on Kurt. So who do you have left for Austin to work with as a babyface?
Well, and this is like you could go back to Kurt because Kurt and Steve hadn't worked together at this point, right?
You could, but I don't think. I mean, yeah, I mean, it would have been fine, but like, I don't know, like.
I understand that there's not an easy solution to what do you do with either guy post WrestleMania if you don't do it the way you did it. But I just, especially rewatching it today, I didn't like it. It was just like, eh.
Oh, well, then that's...
I'll say this.
Go ahead.
I'll say this. I didn't like the whole match. When I rewatched it today, it's 15 minutes of them brawling, and then they both get busted open, and then they're just exchanging finishers back and forth. And then Vince comes out. It's just like it's three separate matches almost in one, and I just don't like any of the three of them. And I went into it thinking, oh, the main event, I remember this being so good. And the more I watched it, I don't know if I like this as much as I remember.
Well, that's going to make my hot take even hotter then. Because
let's hear it.
After watching it again this week, I think that Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels is not my favorite WrestleMania match of all time. I think it's this match. Watching this match this week, I still have that sense of anticipation of like where I know what happens, but I still get that feeling in my chest where when I'm really invested in a wrestling match, which doesn't happen often anymore, I'm really invested on the outcome where I'm really, prior to recently, any match Adam Cole was in, like I got that, especially the bigger, the NXT title matches, I had that feeling, or Kofi Mania, like I don't get that. A match that's 20 years old that I've seen multiple times, I still got that feeling for.
Yeah, I maybe it's because I've seen the match so many times and I knew going in, like, oh, this is the part where he hits him with the ring bell. Oh, this is the part where they exchange the sharpshooter back and forth and stuff like that. And I've kind of come to realize I just don't like The Rock and Austin in the ring together. Everything outside, I've always enjoyed. I don't like the WrestleMania 15 match at all. I've always hated that match. And you know how I feel about WrestleMania 19. I don't think that match is outstanding because, and in both cases, it's Austin is kind of like 19. Austin is, he's done. And 15 is when he's really in the middle of his like slowing down because his neck is bad and he's running hard that he's talked about. And then when I've always thought this was the best of the three, and it still is, but I don't think it's a great match, especially considering how big of a star Rock is and how big of a star Austin is. They're arguably the two biggest stars ever. And unlike Macho Man and Hogan, which I think is a great match, this one I think is just kind of there for me. And I wonder part of it too is it's a no disqualification match on a card that had a hardcore title match, a street fight, a ladder match, and what might as well have been a no disqualification street fight between Triple H and The Undertaker.
Could be.
Everything they did in that match, you had literally already seen earlier in the night. So maybe that's why I watched it today and was like, not that great.
No, for me, it's not even so much what the guys do in the ring, although that's certainly part of it. But between the way the crowd was reacting, like it was clear they were pulling for Austin, and even like you heard a little bit more boos, once it was obvious what was happening at the end, but it still was a lot more, pro Austin than they probably were anticipating. And then again, the commentary, JR's commentary on this match, I think is what really puts it over the top for me. As far as, you know, he's, you know, he wrote great lyrics to their music in this match.
Sure. Yeah, and the stuff with him and Heyman, where Heyman's constantly accusing him of pulling for Austin and having it out for The Rock is, again, it goes back to what we were talking about, the two of them, the tension between the two of them and stuff. No, you're right. The commentary is especially at the end when JR is like, you know, Stone Cold has made a deal with the devil himself to become champion. Like, that's such a great line.
Yeah.
And when he hits him, when Steve hits him with the belt after the match, he's like, enough is enough. Like, you can hear the disappointment in JR's voice. You might know the answer. Did JR know what the outcome was going to be?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because he talked about how he like was vocal about and turning heel was Austin's idea.
I know.
He was like, I don't want to get stale. So before I get stale, you know, let's try turning me. Which again, like, if, you know, hindsight being 20, like, I get it. Like, I understand where he was coming from. At that
maybe and now that I've had a couple minutes to think about it, they knew they were going to go into this WCW invasion too. The easy who does Steve work with post WrestleMania is you have him face these WCW guys,
right?
You know, you throw down a chunk of money and get somebody in there that's a big name to face Steve Austin for that summer. If you're doing this invasion,
people were getting really good chunks of money to stay home.
Well, but I mean, look, for better or worse, Diamond Dallas Page was a huge name. He was involved in it. How much better would DDP's run have been if he wasn't the stalker of the Undertaker's wife and he came in and wrestled Stone Cold Steve Austin?
Yeah. No,
and those guys are friends, and they're good friends. You know, Steve would have wanted to work with him and stuff. And I'm not saying it would have been any better or any worse than what they did. Steve has even said it was the worst mistake he ever made was well, besides walking out, but the worst, you know, idea he ever had was turning heel when he did.
Yeah.
I don't think it did the company any favors because they never found a baby face to take that spot until Cena came along.
Right.
Because The Rock is in and out for a couple of years. Anyone they tried in 2002, 2003, 2004. I mean, Shawn Michaels is great, but he was never Stone Cold. He was never The Rock.
No.
And it wasn't until Cena came along that they found that next guy.
Right. So. All right. Well, any last words?
That being said, I know I've been negative the last few minutes. It's still, you said it at the top. It's the greatest wrestling show of all time. It's the best WrestleMania of all time. I can't even think of anything that comes close.
No.
Certainly not North America. I know some of those New Japan shows in the mid 2010s were loaded cards, but
right.
I don't think anyone in North America has ever put in anything near this good.
Yeah. Nope. So, yeah, I concur. So, well, Matt, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Like I said, any excuse to watch this show, I'll take it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it'd been, because I have been doing the 20-year, ever since 2016, I've been doing the 20-year, like, rewatch of Raw and Smack, of the product. So it's been a good, almost probably 5 years since I've watched this show. Because I haven't strayed. That's pretty much what I've been watching. Is everything that happened 20 years prior is what I was watching. So it'd been a few years, and it's still it's great. So, all right, well, you can follow Matt on Twitter at mdur84. You can follow me at IbanezChris, and like the video, subscribe, leave a comment, and all that jazz. So until next time, see ya.